and enjoying a film.
Yes. Why did you say that? I want the audience to know it too.
So you see that world of filmmaking, what happens is that we are human beings and we are limited by our biological self, right? So there are certain things we need to do to maintain ourselves. Like for example, we need to breathe. If I just think that it's boring, I won't breathe anymore. I'll just die. When you're creating something, when you're into a creative process, what happens is that you are kind of pushing that limit of your existence. That you are studying audiovisual medium, you are no more a common audience who are there to enjoy a film, who are there to kind of just they have paid some money and they want enjoyment in return.
Welcome to another new episode of Student Voice Matters. This is your host Sonalika Goswami. Today's guest is special because he was our professor back at St. Xavier's College Autonomous Kolkata. And whenever he'd come to class and teach, there was somebody who'd write in our students' WhatsApp group that the god of sound has come. So today we have with us our sound and editing professor, Professor Subhadeep Sengupta. So thank you so much for coming. You are a Filmfare Award winner, and it is really a pleasure for us, an honor for us that you have take out your time and come here today. So sir, I want to ask something. That when you came, the first class, what you told us is that now that you guys are students of mass communication and you're going to learn editing and sound, you're going to lose the innocence of watching a film.
And enjoying a film. Yeah.
Yes. Why did you say that? I want the audience to know it too.
So you see that the world of filmmaking, what happens is that we are human beings and we are limited by our biological self, right? So there are certain things we need to do to maintain ourselves. Like for example, we need to breathe. If I just think that it's boring, I won't breathe anymore. I'll just die. So that's in itself that's quite complicated. And on top of it, when you're creating something, when you're into a creative process, what happens is that you are kind of pushing that limit of your existence, and you are trying to imagine someone else's life, something else which is not there actually. You're imagining it all. So when you are creating, before you start this creative process, you need to go through certain kind of education, because it's a language, and everyone must be appreciating the fact that in order to learn a new language, like for example the way we learned English language, it took us quite several years at the beginning of our life when our perception is at its height. So to learn a language, it takes a kind of a time and experience to gather that knowledge. So what I wanted to tell my students is that now that you are studying audiovisual medium, you are no more a common audience who are there to enjoy a film, who are there to kind of just they have paid some money and they want enjoyment in return. It is not only a enjoyment thing for us as students, but we need to go further beyond that analysis and trying to understand what makes that particular shot so attractive, what makes that film so great, why do I like that particular sequence, what really attracts me to. So in order to understand these nuances, the innocence of not knowing goes away with this knowledge. Therefore, when as a student of multimedia or as a student of film, when you start going to the theater watching a film, you can never enjoy it anymore. You can, like a normal soul who will just go there to enjoy. But what happens is that your mind is tuned in order to analyze the shot, in order to understand the situation in which the maker is thinking. So the director's intent is what we try to analyze, and we try to kind of figure out how he has achieved a certain kind of thing. So that was my reason to tell that once you are studying something that needs to be enjoyed, you can no longer, you have to go beyond enjoying it. Of course, you need to enjoy it, but you need to go beyond and start analyzing it and understanding it in a deeper way.
Yeah, because I remember whenever we used to watch a film, I used to count, okay, how many sequences are there, how many shots are taken in each minute. So we used to count like that. Is it a master shot? So that would automatically come in our mind.
Yeah.
And that's when I would relate to your statement the most throughout. So, so the word sound or sound designing, when the students entered the college, I think we were the least informed about this particular sector. We did not know anything about sound designing. We might know, there were students who knew tits and bits about editing, video editing. I knew a little bit about photography, but I don't think much of us had a lot of idea about sound designing. So when you enter every year to a new batch of students and introduce yourself, what is the most exciting part that you look towards?
You know, the I'll tell you something. I was a teacher not by choice, but by compulsion. It is because, let's say, in the early 90s or late 90s, 2000, when the century is turning, people were not at all aware of the subject of sound. People did not even think that sound can be a subject. Even my mother, when I went to the institute, thought that I'm a musician, which I was not, of course. But the thing is that the ignorance is there. It is, I will say that it's not because of the fault of the people, but it is that the things were at that point of time not so much open, and information was quite private. It was not open like it is now. So, and on top of it, I'll say that the subject of sound is a little more complicated because we cannot see sound. We can feel it, we can hear it, we can, but we cannot see it. So, the complication of the subject, what do you do with something that you can't see? Although nowadays with, like for example, the recording right now that you are doing on the computer, you can see the graphs, and that's an indication of the recording. But, it's not like taking a picture. Neither is the process of listening the same as looking at an object. When you have a vision or when you look at something, the information that is there in the shot or in that instance come to you at a very quick time. You don't need to think about it because everything is given, everything is very clear. But for sound, the process is not that immediate, because what happens is that when we listen to a sound, our brain starts matching it with a sound which you have heard in your past, all right, and tries to match it. If it's, and suppose I'm sitting here and I can kind of hear a cuckoo sound outside the room, all right, I will immediately recognize it as a cuckoo only sound, if I have ever heard the cuckoo sound in before my past, all right. So that's why the process of hearing is also a little more complicated and a little more time taking than normally the process of vision is. These all things, along with at that point of time when I'm talking about the late 90s, so what I thought that I was quite passionate about cinema, and I did not even know that that sound is my subject, because I only knew about it in details after I entered the institute. In fact, I knew about sound only after entering the institute, because there are things of the things of sound and cinematography and editing were separately discussed, which you never get the chance to discuss with your parents or with your friends or with anyone who does not have that intrinsic knowledge.
I would agree. When I entered as a student in the mass communication department, I did not know that there were so many departments, because for mass communication we knew there is cinematography, there's editing, and there's maybe advertising, PR. But sound itself is such a vast course. I think it was one of the lengthiest courses that we had to cover. It was there for 3 semesters,
and
I think.
Because it's so technical, it becomes a little monotonous sometimes.
It was there for 3 semesters, and I think for the 3rd semester it was like whole 100-mark paper on sound. So it is the most lengthiest part that we covered. But when talking about ignorance, I remember our editing professor telling us in one class that the parents especially are so much ignorant to, and because again with time they haven't been exposed to as many departments. So she would edit films, but her parents do not exactly understand what editing a film is. So she invited them to watch a movie, saying, I have worked in the movie. So at the end of the movie, when the credits were showing, her parents are like, where were you in the movie? Where did you work? And so she couldn't explain that there's a whole post-production happening, or there's a whole crew working behind the film. So this is the level of ignorance that was there.
It is generally in normal people, those who are enjoying the end product, they are not really concerned about it. But for people who are actually studying it or who aspire to create, they have to know all these things, and kind of that's the minimum passageway for you to kind of work. Now, when you are talking about sound, it's not only the sound of films. Sound is applied in so many other things. Sound is there in television. In television, sound is the most important thing. Sometimes you will see that the people actually listen to television, which they don't even see. So sound in terms of radio, it's although now quite ignored, but at the same time there is a lot of popularity if we go out of the urban situation into the rural area. So there is animation, there is so much. Actually, these vlogs, they also need to have the sound correctly. So
people actually initiated visualizing the world through sound, because there was only radio. There was no television in the beginning.
Exactly. And if you actually think of ourselves, like for example, when I was born, I could not see the world in the first few weeks because my eyes were shut. So what was the first feeling that we had? Even inside the mother's womb, the sound of the liquid and that world is the first exposure to the external world. So, but we don't say that, or we don't kind of it's in our cultural practice. It's not so much dominant to discuss all these things. Therefore, things become not so much clear for many people.
I would just like to bring on this part about sound as a storytelling. And recently have been coming across a lot of Instagram shots, and one of the shot told us how important music or sound is in a visual narrative. That is, there was this one shot from the film Nun, and it's a scary movie, it's a horror movie. And the sound of the actual movie is quite intense. But what they did is, what the content creator did is, he replaced it with a cartoon music.
Exactly, yeah.
And the entire narrative, it was
changed
the same thing. There was a ghost
yeah.
chasing the woman, but the visual became funny.
Yeah. So the undertone completely changed. From a horror, it became comedy.
So the impact
even if you,
of sound.
If you actually mute the sound of any ghost film and watch it, you will feel like laughing, because the main impacts are created by sound. Right. And moreover, so because these are for large screens and for cinema halls and for these subwoofers and big sound systems playing.
All these Dolby music boxes.
Yeah. Even in television, you will see that if you watch a horror film, the impact is not that much, unless you are properly hearing in a home theater
with a
system
and
with a headphone and everything. So that's one very important aspect that we tend to ignore usually. So the coming back to my thing that I was and it was more of a compulsion to teach sound, because at that point of time, now also, as you were saying, that people don't understand the nuances of sound so much. And I'll say that our experience of sound is not very pleasant as well, because for this I can tell you a story that I was working with a British filmmaker, and we were shooting in a very busy place of the town near the College Street area. Okay, and it was a documentary on the College Street area and the book market and things like that. Okay, so we were exposed to the streets quite a lot of time. Most of the time we will be spending on the streets. After 3 or 4 days of shooting, I could identify that the director, who was a British woman, she was becoming a little illogical and kind of, after that day, she became sick. And she could not identify. He said, what happened to me? Then I said, are you bothered by the sound and the honking and the horn of the traffic? And she could find out. And she had to take 2 days of break. And
because she couldn't take that much sound.
So you see that we are exposed to so much of sound that our body also shuts. So in most of the time, our listening ability is not at its fullest. All right. So if you want to listen to something, if you want to concentrate really, you have to really concentrate on it. Not only because of your mental scape, but also if you imagine that you're watching a television and watching a very intricate cinematic shot where there are layers of sound, and there is a fan and the AC on. So which sound you're actually hearing, isn't it? So there are so many hindrances in the process of understanding sound and
But
experiencing
there's one
sound
more
as well.
thing. I love how when our brain defocuses from something, our ear also kind of defocuses. Like it kind of shuts. So like if I'm talking to you, and if I suddenly phase out, you might be talking, but I won't be hearing it. How
Right.
does that is also our nervous impulse. So we
Absolutely.
sort of hear what we want to hear.
Absolutely.
Human beings have
And
got
we kind
this-
of filter out the noise.
Yeah,
That
we-
is
we
that's a
can filter out the
constant
noise,
effort
yeah.
that automatically happens inside us.
Right.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little more about this sound in storytelling. What is like when you sort of work on a film or any documentary, how do you place a sound to make the storytelling more visually attractive,
It's
appealing?
a very interesting thing for me because I am not doing the storytelling over there. I am just supplying the sound that does the story, that helps in the storytelling of the directors. So what is unique about every project is the director's intention. And since with project to project the director also changes, the intention also keeps on changing.
Right.
So my point of challenge for each project is to first tune into the mind of the director and understand what he or she tries to depict in the film, and secondly to kind of understand the film in itself and contribute it not only in my way but understanding the way in which the directors wants it. And there are so many approaches to do sound design for the same shot or for the same sequence, but which one will you take? And not only for that particular shot, for the whole film, what's the kind of overall impact that you want and what is the overall design that you have in mind? For example, in a film about if it's a ghost story, you can from the very beginning take a decision of not recording any footsteps of the ghost characters who are not revealed in the film in the beginning, right? That can be a design that you kind of take with the director, that we won't do that, and very subtly it will indicate that these characters don't belong to the world.
Correct.
Isn't it? So these are things that does not come onto me alone. It's a collaborative work with the director. So as much as the director can give me more input and inspire me, I will also provide him with more and more templates to work on and to
Correct.
think and ponder. And we will select maybe one of the templates which fits most with the film. In fact, the film that I did long time ago, 2000, I worked for 5 years for that film, 2005 to 10 approximately.
5 years for one film.
Yeah. In that film, that was a very challenging film. For that, I also won the National Award. That was in 2010.
Right.
That was a Malayalam film called the Chitra Sutram. All right. And it had many layers and many complications. So we did the whole design of the film 3 times over because there were completely 3 different edits. We were also trying to find the perfect way out. And the 4th design and the 4th edit actually became the final film. Alright, so it's also a lot of permutation combination that you need to do and to achieve what you, because for that particular film we did not have a reference to begin with. Therefore we were trying out different avenues and different textures and different kind of sounds which might have worked, which might in parts. So we kind of at the end of doing 3 times the work over, for the 4th time we exactly knew what to do, and understanding from that. So that sometimes that is also necessary for something that you don't have the reference of, to find out the.
We were just talking about commerce versus art, this conversation we were having. So when you put 5 years into one film,
Yeah, because that was not a commercially made film. It was mostly an art house film which was intended for the festivals, and so we could afford that. In a commercial film, you simply cannot afford
5
that.
years.
It's
But then
not
again,
possible.
there are films like Bahubali and all that who spend 2 to 3 years in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
entire craft.
absolutely.
But just asking that for like a normal film, if there wouldn't be commerce involved, how much time do you think, I know it's a subjective answer, but how much time do you think it requires to do the entire sound designing for the film, put your mindset
it
in
will
it?
largely depend upon the complexity of the project, but I think to do a normal feature film, it also depends upon the director mostly. You'll find directors who will be doing 13 14 films in a year, and you'll also find directors who work maybe one film in 5 years. So for technicians, for those who are doing sound, you need to adjust with each project. All
Do
right,
you think art is compromised on the way?
now see that we should not actually divide the word art from commerce, because they are quite interdependent and kind of
True.
interlinked
True. Everybody
together.
works for a living.
Without even the artists are they don't get food from heaven, so they
Right,
have to work
right.
something out. So it's the kind of the least amount of compromise that you can do with your art in a particular given commercial circumstance should be your film or should be the approach of any
Yeah.
filmmaker or any any technician also.
How now? There's one more interesting aspect of it is in mass communication department in our college. It wasn't a compulsion that you had to have a science background. However, it was a BSc course, majorly because there was a lot of maths and science and sound. Please explain to us the implication of science in sound.
See, actually, not only in sound, but if you imagine cinematography
Even
also,
cinematography,
there is
correct.
so
The-
much
the
of
lens
optics,
and
so
everything,
much
yeah.
of light,
Correct,
and
even
so
there
many
we did
things.
science, yeah.
So the process of filmmaking or the process of creating audio visual medium entails that you work with tools which require a certain kind of knowledge of using it. So the kind of it's not like painting that it's a singular activity. It also comes along with a whole team of people, because in order to conceive and execute another world, one brain is not enough or one person is not enough. You need to have teams looking after different. That's why we have sound team, editing team, cinema.
Correct.
That's how
Different
the
departments.
whole the structure
Yeah.
is divided like that. So the thing is that once you start working in this field, there is actually a 50-50 distribution of if you can kind of imagine that how much percentage of it is science, how much of it is arts,
Art,
because it's all interlinked, and I'll say it's 50-50. Unless you know the scientific part of using your tools, you are not going to achieve the artistic effect you are going to create in your so that's the kind of thing. But I will say that HS level of science actually helps, the plus two,
The 11 and
plus 2 level,
12.
because
Okay.
there are certain aspects of science which are specially required for sound, like for example simple harmonic motion, electronics, electromagnetism,
Which
for-
non-science background
yeah,
students find a little more difficult.
But in a college where you have this option of entering without any science background, you need to kind of make it understandable for people who are coming from, say, arts background or commerce background. So that's what I want to do, is to make it as simple as possible for them. But there is a limit, if you need to speak about frequency, you need to speak about hertz, right? You need to
Right.
kind of these are things, but these are not very difficult and
No,
not
hertz,
out of the way
frequency
kind
we
of.
learned in ninth and 10th as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
yeah.
So what I want to kind of tell my students is that with the class 10 level, science is good enough for you to understand the aspects of sound and to kind of grab it fully.
I'd like to go back to the part when we were discussing.
No,
about-
I'll rectify this one thing, that again, now if you are there would be certain people from the institute who would study sound, but maybe they are into the process of maintaining equipments. So if you're in a trade like that, or say calibrating equipments,
Yeah.
then of course your knowledge of science has to be much more deeper. Like for example, imagine the people employed by the Dolby labs,
Right.
all right, who are going about in the cinema halls and calibrating.
They
Unless
require
you
sound
exactly know
technicians.
acoustics properly, unless you are a sound technician, you can't do that.
Can't do it.
So for works like that, which are a part of sound, of course,
Right.
you need to have a deep knowledge of science. But for audiovisual creation, the creative part, you can still do away with a little bit of lesser
But
knowledge.
to be a sound technician, isn't it better to just do like a sound engineering or an audio engineering and
Now again, yeah, nowadays what happened that these audio engineering courses also they require that you have a science background. Well,
yeah, but
that's
that is engineering. But that's what I'm saying. Like, is instead of doing mass comm, wouldn't that be a more easy approach for you if you want to become a technician, or if you know that you want to?
now again, suppose say someone does physics in their college years, and suppose they want to do sound design later on. Of course, it will be easier for them to pick up because, but not all the physics subjects are relevant for sound. So it's not so much of a way in which you can study in order to study cinema because filmmaking I think it's a conglomeration of many art forms
Right,
and many
true,
departments.
true.
So the main thing that is required is for you to be open to kind of for knowledge, for
For knowledge, for
understanding,
taking, correct.
yeah, for understanding things. That's for even in filmmaking we actually learn a lot by watching films. So watch different films and see what is being done and how it's been done, what are the different elements that you can see, and not all elements are present which could have been, why certain elements are absent.
What are the two
And-
films that you would recommend anybody who's like interested in knowing and observing sound? What are the two films that you'd recommend people to watch? I feel like I know this answer, but I want you to.
You know the answer because the first film is the first film we also saw in class is
Right.
The Man Escaped.
Landscape.
That film takes the use of sound to a certain different level where actually sound becomes part of the narrative for their escape and the kind of whole story. And there are lots actually if you're but Man Escaped and maybe Solaris in terms of again sound design is very different because it's also trying to create a world which is completely different than real world, and which it does not by taking the help of music but taking the cue from the real life sounds and arranging them in a certain way.
Right. What is the recent film that you watched and you were like really impressed by its sound designing?
Now I'll say that not all the films that I see I can analyze the sound design carefully because of the mainly of the projection issues. Sometimes when I see a film in a television and watching it in a television, I should not do a sound design analysis.
Because the sound is anyway.
Yeah, so
compromised.
most of the sound analysis that you can do of the films are the films that you see in a hall, which are commercial films. And if you actually go and watch any Hollywood film nowadays, the sound design is terrific, and the qualitative aspect is taken care of already. So actually watching any film is a good experience for me because again what I do is apart from enjoying the film in one level, I also start analyzing what the director has intended to do with the sound and how he's projecting ideas with different sounds,
Right.
the application of sound. So all films are interesting to me in that sense. But for a student who is actually going into sound, it's the best way is to understand the application of sound in simpler films, in classic films, which you'll also get the material and notes on the net. So that will be easier approach to understand
to
understand
interpret
the
the
world
music.
and interpret soundtrack.
Now, just coming back to the students, and so when they enter and when they go through these, they understand the importance of sound, they know the variations and everything. And I do see a lot of the people from my batch as well, they want to become sound designers, sound editors.
Yeah, really? I don't find many.
And there are maybe not many, but there are definitely. I mean, the different people want to. But there are students who like end up getting so impressed by everything related to the sound class, more so because of you, and so they eventually wanna pursue a career in sound or even music, but it's as alien to the parents as it was for them in the first day. So do you think that has changed? Do you think how do you think that somebody can sort of pursue or make it understandable for the parents?
Now, see, in our country, the cultural perspective of people working with films is not very favorable because in normal people tend to think that the world of film is very dirty and full of politics and full of corruption, right? Which is not
Completely
entirely
untrue.
true, because not entirely true, it's true of course, because but it is true for any other industry as well. It applies for any other and you'll find those things. Now the thing is that so if me as a parent, I suddenly think that my son is going to a profession which is not very clean in its nature, of course I'll be tensed about it, right? So it's I think it's also the responsibility of the student or the person who is interested so much to pursue sound, to show the passion and to show the relevance of it in his or her life, the importance of it, and not only to show it but to make it understand to the parents that these are the ways, because for them it might not be very apparent. The information that we have or the young people nowadays have, the way they're used to it, their parents might not be used to it so much. So it is also their responsibility to make them understand. But one thing is to be understood, that the profession of sound is not as lucrative as for like for example becoming a doctor or becoming an engineer, right? So only it is mostly driven by passion. There is not so much money also, even contrary to the belief that filmmaking has got glamour and money. It's not, because in the local markets hardly has any money. If you are going to Bombay or if you are going to Hollywood, then it's a different thing. And if you are pursuing, even there, if you are not pursuing the mainstream commercial, there is hardly any money in it. So unless you are quite passionate about it, it becomes a little difficult to sustain, because in the beginning, maybe for 5, 6, 10 years, you might have to do location recordings, which means that you have to go out on the fields, run around with the camera, now unless you enjoy this kind of thing, how can you sustain it? It's impossible. So the word passion is the most important thing, and that passion needs to be understood also, how much passionate I am for that particular subject. Because at certain times we might think that I love sound and I would love to pursue it, but again this does not have the so much glamour and glory in it. So unless you are prepared
you were just telling me that the late hours you stay up and work on sound, that is not very
that is
glamorous.
Only driven by passion, believe me, otherwise I could not have sustained. Most of my friends who actually teach in colleges, they don't do much work at home,
because it's hard to balance.
It kind of and also filmmaking drains you a lot in terms not only physically but emotionally. That space you'll also have to kind of you have to protect it yourself emotionally. If you break down project after project, and what will happen to your family, that you need to balance as well. So I'll say that those who are really interested and really passionate about the world of sound should only seek the pathway in which they can become a professional sound designer or engineer.
So, but again, when you talk about sound, or if I would not be a mass comm student, if I would be hearing as a third person out there in the world, for me sound is equal to music. So when somebody says that, oh, I am into the sound industry, I'm like, okay, musician, like you
again
said.
It's a misnomer.
Even if they are like into say sound designing or whatever, I think for most parents, they understand classical music
yeah,
more.
exactly, yeah.
And to become a singer or to do something, or even to compose music, something classical. But there are so many more depths of sound design.
Because see, the sound in its only form comes to us only as music, isn't it? Of course, nowadays there are podcasts, but these are very new things. Earlier in our parents' time, probably the only thing concerning sound would be music, which is pure sound, right? All the other sounds that would come, like for example a film soundtrack, used to come with a film, so there is not additionally you are not putting any attention to it. Therefore the only apparent model is that of a music and that of a musician and that of a that because of that misnomer, because of that misconception, people tend to think. But again, in the world of sound, you can become a sound engineer who is only catering to the music world, and actually there are engineers who are specialists sound designing for films, and there are specialist engineers who are specialists for mixing music or recording music. So like both entails two different worlds, and actually two different kind of techniques, and not everyone can do the other thing. And usually if you are a musician yourself, to become a music engineer is much more easier, because you understand the depth of it and you can kind of tweak around the
Right. Do you see any change from when you started to now? Do you see any changes? Like the students, are they more drawn to it? Can they pursue
See,
this field
the
more
very
easily?
interesting thing I'll tell you, that the time when we learned sound is that the time was the analog age, where kind of everything was the analog. So we learned in the institute mostly in analog technology, a little bit of digital technology which was coming in at that point of time, 90s, mid 90s. But when we suddenly got out of the institute, everything changed. The whole scenario changed and everything became digital, right? And I don't know whether it's true or not. I was probably one of the first sound designers in Kolkata to actually hire a computer.
Okay.
And I did a sound design using just a software and a computer back in 2004 or 5. I think 2004. And I thought, when I can do it, others can do it as well. Before this, mind you, if you would like to record any sound, or if you would, even if you're a musician, you want to come up with an album, you have to go to a studio, which is a very complicated kind of a thing. You have to spend your time doing a very unnatural way of recording it, and then sit with the engineer to do the mix and all these things. Now it's suddenly shifted to your home. So that was, I think, it was a very, very big step in kind of, liberating sound out of the hands of few and kind of, democratizing it. And I think nowadays everyone can work with sound. Everyone has a little bit of knowledge about how to, even, you don't have to become a creator with sound. Suppose you are a fan of music, you love listening music, all right? How are you listening to your music is also very important. Like, for example, are you listening to it with your mobile phone speaker, or are you listening to it connecting a DAC with your mobile phone, or using a proper wired headphone, or are you using Bluetooth headphone? And all these things actually matters a lot. In the last 10 years, I'll say that the digital technology has enhanced so much that nowadays the kind of instrument that you can buy for 10,000 rupees, it would be unthinkable to kind of achieve that quality just 10 years back from now. So, if you are aware of it, you are aware of it, and you kind of, buy into the situation and you start experiencing the situation. I'll tell about myself. I keep on buying these things and kind of, tweaking, because it's very important for me to understand what is good sound and, to distinguish it from bad sound.
How do you tell us a little bit?
Now, I'll tell you an example. You take the best song that you love. You take your mobile phone and put in a 1000 rupees Bluetooth headphone, and you listen to that music. Now that's an example of a bad listening experience. Do you ever realize it? We most of the times don't, because that company who has made that earphone will advertise it in such a way that you'll think that you have bought the best headphone in the world and you're experiencing the best, and you have spent 1000 rupees for it. But, unless you know what the reference is, or unless you have actually heard the song in the studio in which it was mixed, how do you know how it should sound? So,
but that is not possible also.
It's theoretically probably impossible, but you can go nearer to the approach in which the music director finally wanted it for you to listen to it. By nowadays studying different kind of equipments that's easily available to you, and kind of thinking which one among your budget is the best suited. I'll tell you, nowadays entry level equipments give you more or less a good sound, but again you have to kind of understand which to select, because nowadays options are so much, and within that option there is so much bad products as well. So you need to be very careful about choosing what equipments do you listen to your music on. Okay. At the same time, if the same song can be played, through a proper deck, not much. Maybe you just save up for 6 months and kind of go for your limited budget, but get a separate deck, get a separate head earphone which properly plays those sound, not in a elevated bass kind of bass head kind of or elevated treble, but in their natural. What we are from our childhood, we are conditioned with all these advertisements, with all these kind of bloated things which does not actually exist.
This is probably the best earphone.
So we need to understand that, and for that gradually experience comes in a way. If you are more passionate about it, you can now read out about this in different forums and kind of but I'll tell you, if you if you're passionate about sound, then you have to kind of treat yourself with good sound in order to distinguish what is good sound and what is bad sound. And whenever you're producing, my motto is that give me anything, I'll provide you with gold. So that I actually did a documentary just 2-3 months back. I finished it. It's a feature length documentary, 1.5 hours, and this director has gone to the it's a documentary on herself, on her own life, which she had shot over the last 10 years. All right. So you can imagine the kind of sound and the kind of equipment she has used, from handycam, from mobile phone.
It has revolutionized.
Fan is on, and when I was actually hearing the film, I was actually thinking in my mind, what is it that excites me to do this film? I found out that just the challenge of cleaning the noise in that film drew me to that project, and it was kind of and nowadays technologies are also kind of so advanced, you can achieve quite a lot. Right. So it was not a very interesting documentary for me as a subject, because for life. That her personal life, but I had to contribute in a way, and that was kind of the magic which we kind of shared in that film.
I just had one more. We are almost towards the end of the podcast, so I'll ask you one question. That is, there was a time in the Bengal film industry when there was a lack of everything: good films, good music, good cinematography as a whole. So during the same time that you won a national award for a Malayalam movie, that was actually the worst time for Bengal music.
Yeah, it was a little earlier than that. It started picking up from around mid 2000, 2005.
When I think Jeet Ganguly came into picture, when the
kind of
music industry picked up again. Why do you think there was this downfall of Bengali music?
I'll say that it's there might be lots of issues. Firstly, I think commerce was one big issue, but apart from that, if you take the period before that, like for example, if you take the period up to 70s, 60s and 70s, you will see that, you can at least name 10 different film directors who are world-class filmmakers. All right. Sure. You can at least name 10 different actors and actresses who are world-class actors and actresses. But suddenly, with their demise and with their going away from the industry, suddenly there was a vacuum that created.
Correct. And nobody could fill that up. For some reason.
And nobody could fill that up. There were lack of ideas, and there were people, of course, who were kind of pulling the industry along still at that.
To that class.
But I think it's a natural phenomena that happens. Once you have a cultural upheaval, after that there will be a period of lull. And again, when it goes down to the ultimate low level, then only it can shine. It can
shine
kind of
back again. Back again. But is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
What kind of thing that you want?
Anything. Of course. Like anything you'd like to share from your experience.
The most important suggestion I'd like to give to the youth nowadays is that try to give a chance to your environment. Normally what we do is that, when you're going to the college, the first thing that we do is put on a Bluetooth headphone and put in and, go out of the metro and you're listening to your best song. Now what you are doing with that, of course you are listening to your best song, you are in your best mood, but at the same time you are denying
The environment.
One point, but more importantly, you are not experiencing your environment. You are not experiencing what are the sound elements that is there in a metro station.
I think that is why one of your first assignments was recording the sound of your environment.
So that is very important, and nowadays it's even more so because people are engrossed in a virtual environment with their mobile phones, and they don't give the world a chance. So if you want to become a filmmaker, a sound technician, a cinematographer, you cannot afford to deny the real world. You cannot afford to deny the experiences that comes with the real world. Maybe it's not pleasant all the time, but
even that unpleasant observation
that is very important.
required.
Sadness is also required. Unless you understand sadness, how do you understand happiness? In
So
contrast
true,
with it,
so true.
so those things are becoming more and more interesting. Another very interesting takeaway I'll tell you, Sonalika, it was not even in your batch, that people are so individualistic that they fail to work in a team.
Has it happened because of lockdown more? Like
I
people
don't know.
got
It's
so
post
cornered in
lockdown
them?
that problem is becoming more and more evident.
Because
And
we loved working in groups and we would look forward to group assignments.
I will say that's a natural reaction. When you're locked inside a room, you'll want to work in a group. I want to be with
Yeah.
your friends all the
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
But somehow now, as the lockdown is over, people are in a group, but they are all, মানে কি বলবো,
Trying to
they're-
do their thing individually.
Individual people. They don't even understand the dynamics of a group, the ethics of working in a group.
So
Now
true.
filmmaking is a group activity. You cannot do it individually.
it's not possible.
So unless you are also a team player, it becomes impossible to work. So that's the thing. You have to be open for everything to give you a chance. So that's very important.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming and talking
My
to
pleasure.
us. It was so nice hearing from you. Thank you so much.